Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon so that you never miss any video lesson from Rao's IAS Study Cell.
Hello and welcome to Daily News Simplified, an analysis of the Hindu newspaper from UPSC perspective. Today we will discuss the Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper dated 25th July 2020. And the articles that we will discuss today are displayed on your screen. So let us start our discussion. Now this article on page number 14 reads that the RBI has signed a $400 million currency swap facility for Sri Lanka. And this currency swap facility has come in the background of declining foreign exchange reserves in Sri Lanka. So this agreement aims at countering the currency volatility in Sri Lanka. Now similarly, recently there was a large-scale outflows of foreign portfolio investments from India. And this led to the shortage of dollars, and it also led to record fall in the value of rupee vis-a-vis the dollars. So in order to address the volatility in the exchange rate and to make available dollars in the domestic market, India was in discussion with the United States of America for dollar swap line. And also India has already entered into currency swap agreements with number of countries, for example Japan, the United Arab Emirates, SAARC countries, etc. So in this background, let us understand how the currency swap agreement actually works from the Indian perspective. And this can be important for us from the General Studies paper 2 point of view under the topic International Relations, and can also be important for us from the economy point of view under the General Studies paper 3 point of view. So now let us understand how would the proposed dollar swap line work between India and United States of America. So let's say there's a swap that has been agreed to between these countries for $100 applicable for 3 months. So in the first leg of such an agreement, the RBI would provide $100 worth Indian rupees to the US Fed Bank, and this would be provided at prevailing exchange rate, and in return the Fed Bank would provide equivalent value of dollars to the Reserve Bank of India. Now let's say the prevailing exchange rate is that $1 is equal to rupees 70. So effectively the RBI would provide rupees 7,000 to the Fed Bank, and in return it would get $100. Now in the second leg, that is after 3 months, the US Fed Bank would return rupees 70,000 and take back $100 from the Reserve Bank of India. And this transaction will take place at the exchange rate which was fixed in the first leg, that is at $1 equal to rupees 70. And due to this fixation of the exchange rates, there is no exchange rate risk involved in the currency swap agreements. So now if during the second leg of the transaction, that is after 3 months of the agreement, the exchange rate might have changed to $1 equal to rupees 80 or $1 equal to rupees 60. But still the swap take place at the exchange rate which was agreed to in the first leg of the transaction. And that is why the swap agreement prevents both the central banks from any kind of exchange rate risks. So basically under a swap line or swap agreement, both the countries have fixed the exchange rate for a fixed period of time. Now how would such an agreement help India? So the dollars which are availed under this currency swap agreement would act as second line of defense after the foreign exchange reserves. And we note that RBI normally uses its foreign exchange reserve to arrest the currency volatility. Further, it will help in reducing the speculation in the forex market and would provide stability to the exchange rate. So now what are the details of the currency swap agreement that India has signed with Sri Lanka? Now as per the agreement, the Reserve Bank of India has decided to provide $400 million currency swap facility for Sri Lanka. And this agreement would not only be important for Sri Lankan economy, but it is also important from the Indian interests point of view. Now we know that the higher dependence of the Sri Lankan government on the Chinese loans has led to a form of debt trap for Sri Lanka. And accordingly, this agreement is in the form of a rescue package which has been extended by the Indian government. Further, this agreement paves the way for strengthening of economic relationship between India and Sri Lanka. And thus, such an agreement paves the way for opportunities in other avenues as well, for example, boosting of trade and investment between these two economies. Now, after looking at the currency swap agreement which has been signed between India and Sri Lanka, let us look at an analysis that has come up in today's newspaper which highlights the need for resetting ties between India and Sri Lanka. Now this article on page number 14 talks about an important neighbor of India, that is Sri Lanka. And this article analyzes the need for resetting the ties between India and Sri Lanka in the background of increasing conflicts and the standoff between India and China in the Galwan Valley. And this analysis can be important for us from General Studies paper 2 point of view under the topic International Relations. Now in this we will not get into the background of India-Sri Lanka relations. However, we will look at the point of view of the experts which has been expressed in this article regarding what India and Sri Lanka need to do and how both these countries should cooperate for peaceful and prosperous South Asia. Now we note that India has been facing problems in its relationship with some of the important neighbors. For example, India is engaged in conflict with China in the Galwan Valley, and there are perpetual border issues between India and Pakistan, and especially one of the issues is that of Kashmir. So in that background, some of the experts have analyzed the need for resetting the India-Sri Lanka relations. Now, the Sri Lankan president has recently said that there is no final decision on the East Container Terminal project at the Colombo port. Now, regarding the development of this East Container Terminal project at the Colombo port, India, Sri Lanka and Japan had agreed to jointly develop this port. However, the Sri Lankan government is yet to make a final decision regarding this. Now, why has there been no clear or final decision on this development project? And that has been because many of the opposition parties in Sri Lanka are protesting this project or participation of India in this project. And they have said that it will amount to giving away the national assets of Sri Lanka to India. However, the reality is that Sri Lanka's port authority will retain 100% ownership of this facility, that is the East Container Terminal project at Colombo. And this was decided in a memorandum of understanding which was signed in 2019 between India, Sri Lanka and Japan. So this issue of development of East Container Terminal project highlights that despite India showing its intent to participate in the economic development of Sri Lanka, there has been considerable opposition in the Sri Lanka. So the experts have said that the Rajapaksa government, which is the present government, is likely to win with a 2/3 majority in the upcoming elections in Sri Lanka. And that is a good sign for India because the current government has shown its intention of seeking help from India regarding its economic development. Further, we note that India has been discussing with Sri Lanka on the debt freeze of about $960 million. And also India and Sri Lanka had been discussing the currency swap agreement. In this, we note that India has announced a $450 million line of credit to Sri Lanka. And this shows that India has been proactive in building its relationship with its neighbors. However, Sri Lanka has accused India that India's developmental assistance in the region or in the South Asian region is uneven because India has been providing the developmental aid to certain neighbors more as compared to others. So in this, some of the experts have said that India needs to balance its developmental assistance in the South Asian region, so that some countries do not feel discriminated because of such developmental assistance which is uneven. Further, India-Sri Lanka relations are very important from the regional security point of view. And in this, some of the experts have said that immediate neighbors would serve as buffer states in the event of an extra-regional threat. Further, they have also alerted India that India should avoid seeing the India-Sri Lanka relations from the India-China prism. And we note that Chinese economic activity has been increasing in Sri Lanka, and we note that it was involved in the development of the Hambantota port in Sri Lanka. So accordingly, various experts have cautioned India that people who are resorting to India-China prism often tend to overlook or misinterpret the key details. And in this background, they have again said that or reiterated that India and Sri Lanka relationship will always be an important cornerstone of a peaceful and prosperous South Asia. Now, what India and Sri Lanka need to do in this background? So both India and Sri Lanka should focus on increasing the volume and quality of people-to-people link between both the countries. And there is a need for continued high-level engagement on building economic and people-to-people links. Further, there is a need for cooperation in health sector in the background of COVID-19 pandemic. And we note that several Indian companies are involved in the race to develop the vaccine against the COVID-19 disease. And this shows that India has huge potential for the cooperation in health sector. So some of the experts have said that this is a once in a generation opportunity to cement its goodwill with the neighborhood by securing regional access to these vaccines to the neighborhood countries. So, the key point that is highlighted in this article is that the neighbors of India are important for India as they can serve as buffer states in the event of extra regional threat to India. Further, security experts have warned that India should avoid seeing its relationship with neighborhood from the India-China prism. Further, there is a need for increasing volume and quality of people-to-people links between India, and there is also a need for engagement on economic relationship between the neighbors and especially Sri Lanka in this regard. And also, India can use its medical diplomacy if it develops the vaccine against the COVID-19 disease, and this provides a great opportunity for India to develop its relationship with the neighborhood countries. So these are few important points, and with this, let's take up the next news article now. Now, on page number 6, there is an editorial and an article, and both are related to the issue of anti-defection and the political drama that is happening in the state of Rajasthan. And both these articles discuss about the issue of disqualification which has been provided under the 10th schedule and which is related to the voluntarily giving up of party membership. And there has been a lot of debate and discussion regarding the voluntarily giving up of membership under the 10th schedule and the associated disqualification. And there have been various interpretations and misinterpretations of this provision of voluntarily giving up the membership under the 10th schedule and the associated disqualification. And a prominent question that has been raised is regarding the freedom of expression of the members of Legislative Assembly. That is, whether the freedom to express certain views by a section of MLAs which is contrary to the party lines without voluntarily giving up the membership attracts disqualification under the 10th schedule or not. Now, this issue of disqualification of the MLAs and the power of the Speaker has been discussed in detail in the DNS of 23rd July 2020. Again, some of the issues were also discussed in the DNS of 17th July 2020. So do go through those videos and try and understand the political drama and the various issues that are happening in the state of Rajasthan. However, what we will do is that we will revise from a previous DNS video various provisions of the anti-defection law and also various interpretations of the Supreme Court regarding these provisions. Now, this article on page number 6 is related to the issue of defections that are happening in the Legislative Assembly of Manipur. And defections simply mean that MLAs and MPs switch from one political party to another. And to control this issue of defections, we note that India has enacted this anti-defection law. Now, even after the anti-defection law, the MLAs and MPs sometimes use the loopholes in the anti-defection law. And at the same time, the functioning of the Speaker, who has been given the power to decide on the disqualification of the MLAs, has also come into question. So in this regard, the issue of defection has been challenged in the Supreme Court time and again. And in this regard, some of the observations of the Supreme Court are important regarding the anti-defection law. So accordingly, in the Daily News Simplified of 23rd January 2020, a decision or the order of Supreme Court was discussed in detail. And in that video, some important issues or provisions of the anti-defection law were also discussed. So what we will do in this video is that we will revise from that Daily News Simplified certain aspects of the anti-defection law and also the issue or the order which was given out by the Supreme Court of India. And this can be a very important aspect for us from the General Studies paper 2 point of view under the topic Constitution and Polity. So if you look at the UPSC previous year questions, you will find that a question related to anti-defection has been asked in the mains examination of 2013 and 14. And again, a question was asked in the preliminary examination of 2014 related to this anti-defection law. So if you look at this question, it was a very simple question that which one of the following schedules of the Constitution of India contains the provisions regarding the anti-defection law, and we note that the 10th schedule of the Constitution of India contains the provisions regarding the anti-defection law. Now the issue was that in the Manipur Assembly elections, out of the total 60 seats, the Congress party had won the 28 seats. However, the BJP had won only 21 seats. Now despite getting such low number of seats, BJP formed the government in Manipur Assembly. And it was able to do so because of support of other coalition parties and at the same time some MLAs switching from the Indian National Congress to the BJP. And this gave BJP the majority in the Manipur Assembly election. Now this switching of an MLA from the Congress party to the BJP and supporting the BJP even when he or she has won the elections on the ticket of the Congress party is a case of defection. And accordingly, it is the duty of the Speaker of the Manipur Assembly to decide on the question of disqualification of that MLA which has been changing or switching his sides. So accordingly, the Speaker of the Manipur Assembly was not deciding on the question of disqualification of the MLA because he had defected from the Congress party to the BJP. And accordingly, a petition was filed in the High Court of the Manipur. And this petition asked the High Court to direct the Speaker to decide on the disqualification of the defected MLA. However, the Speaker of the Manipur Assembly was sitting on this request and was not deciding on the disqualification of the MLA. However, the Manipur High Court refused to issue any directions to the Speaker, and accordingly, they referred this case to the Supreme Court because already certain issues related to anti-defection law are pending in the Supreme Court. And in that Supreme Court judgment, the Supreme Court had said that the High Court and Supreme Court can issue the directions to the Speaker. So in short, it nullified the observations of the Manipur High Court that it cannot issue directions to the Speaker. So this Supreme Court judgment decided that the Supreme Court and the High Courts can issue the directions to the speakers of. However, the issue here in this Manipur Assembly was that the Speaker was not deciding on the issue of disqualification and was stretching it beyond limit. And accordingly, the Supreme Court had set a time limit of 3 months to the Manipur Assembly Speaker to decide on the issue of disqualification. So in short, the Supreme Court provided that any issue of disqualification should be decided by the Speaker within a period of 3 months. And also the Supreme Court in that judgment said that Constitution should be amended to provide for a permanent tribunal which is headed by the retired judges to decide on the issue of anti-defection. So these were few observations of the Supreme Court regarding the defection issue in the Manipur Assembly and regarding the functioning of the Speaker under the anti-defection law. So in short, it had set a time limit of 3 months for the Assembly Speaker to decide. Secondly, it had clarified that the Supreme Court and High Court can issue directions to the Speaker regarding the anti-defection law. And also the Supreme Court observed that the Constitution needs to be amended to form a permanent tribunal to decide on the issue of anti-defections. Now regarding the important provisions of the anti-defection law, you should note that it was enacted for the disqualification of the members of the parliament and the state legislatures on the ground of defection from one political party to another. So as we have seen that there are instances when the MLAs and the MPs have been defecting from one political party to another. And especially we have seen that MLAs have defected in the Assembly of Karnataka, Madhya Pradesh, Arunachal Pradesh and in the state of Manipur. So accordingly, a constitutional amendment was brought in and it was known as the 52nd Constitutional Amendment Act. Further, another important provision of the anti-defection law is regarding the authority who decides on the disqualification of the members on the grounds of defection. And accordingly, the anti-defection law has provided that the deciding authority regarding the disqualification of the members of parliament and the state legislatures on the ground of defection is the Speaker or the presiding officer of that house. Further, this act provides as to when a member can be disqualified. So a member of Legislative Assembly or member of Parliament can be disqualified on the ground of voluntarily giving up the membership of his or her political party. Further, a member can be disqualified if he or she votes or abstains from voting contrary to the directions which have been issued by the political party without obtaining prior permission. Thirdly, if an independent candidate joins any political party. And further, if a nominated member joins the political party after a period of 6 months. So these are the conditions when a member of Legislative Assembly or the Parliament can be disqualified on the grounds of defections. Now there are certain exceptions that have been provided against the anti-defection law. So in case there is merger of at least 2/3 of the members of a political party with another political party, this will not be considered as an issue of defection, and hence the MLAs or the MPs cannot be disqualified on the ground of defections if there is a merger of at least 2/3 of the members of a political party with another political party. And another exception that has been provided is that the Speaker of the House is allowed to give up the membership of the political party. So these are two exceptions, and these are the grounds on which a member of the Legislative Assembly or Parliament can be disqualified. And another important point is the deciding authority, and we note that it is the presiding officer of the respective houses. Now, despite an elaborate anti-defection law, there have been instances that the members of the Parliament and the Legislative Assemblies have been exploiting the loopholes of this law for switching from one political party to pursue their narrow interests. And accordingly, there have been certain interpretations of the Supreme Court on this anti-defection law. So, first issue that came up in front of the Supreme Court was regarding the voluntarily giving up of the membership, which is one of the grounds for disqualification of members of parliament and the state legislatures on the ground of defection. So, regarding the voluntarily giving up of the membership, it is known that the voluntary resignation from the political party amounts to defection, and hence a person can be disqualified on this ground. However, the Supreme Court has observed that the conduct of a member can also be considered as voluntarily giving up of the membership. So, accordingly, if a member criticizes his or her own party and also provides a public support for the opposition parties, then it is considered that that member has voluntarily given up his membership of that political party, and hence this can be used as a ground for disqualification of that member of the House. Further, in the Kohito Holohan case of 1993, the Supreme Court had decided that the decisions of the Supreme Court under the anti-defection law are subject to judicial review. That is, they are not exempt from the judicial review. Further, in this recent Supreme Court judgment, it has set a time limit for the Speaker to decide on the issue of disqualification of the members of the Houses. And this time limit that has been provided by the Supreme Court is of 3 months. And further, the Supreme Court had clarified that the Supreme Court and High Court can issue the directions to the speakers for their functions under the anti-defection law. So these are few interpretations of the Supreme Court regarding the anti-defection law, and also we have seen certain important provisions of the anti-defection law. Further, another important issue that came up in the Assembly of Karnataka was the resignation of the MLAs from the ruling party, and accordingly the Speaker had disqualified those MLAs. However, one condition that was imposed by the Speaker of Karnataka Assembly was that the members who have been disqualified cannot fight the elections for next 6 years. However, this decision of the Speaker of Karnataka Assembly was annulled by the Supreme Court of India, and it had said that the members who have been disqualified on the grounds of anti-defection law can again fight elections for the remaining term of the Assembly. So again, that judgment also becomes very important related to the anti-defection law. So these are few issues, and with this, let's take up the next article now. Now, this article on page number 6 is related to an order of the Supreme Court that was given by it in the month of February in this year. And in that order, the Supreme Court had directed the Ministry of Defence to grant permanent commission to women officers who are serving in the Indian Army. And this becomes an important part under the General Studies paper 2 under the topic Social Justice and Social Issues. And this is basically related to the issue of permanent commission to the women in the Indian Army. And few days back, the Ministry of Defence has formally granted the permanent commission to women officers in the Indian Army. Now we discussed this issue of permanent commission for women in the Indian Army in the month of February when the order of Supreme Court came out. So accordingly, let us revise from that video what were the issues that were concerning the permanent commissioning of the women in the Indian Army. And in that, we had discussed the current status of women in the armed forces, what were the reasons for that, and what did the Supreme Court order mean. So let us revise all these aspects. Now this article on page number 1 is related to the judgment of the Supreme Court, which says that the women army officers are now eligible for permanent commission. Now this is an important judgment of the Supreme Court because it breaks down the stereotypes towards women. And now women army officers will also be considered at par with the male army officers. So this can be an important part from General Studies paper 2 under the topic Social Justice and Social Issues. So to understand the current judgment of the Supreme Court, let us understand the current status of women in the army. So presently the permanent commission is currently granted to only 2 services, namely the Judge Advocate General's branch and the Army Education Corps. However, in February last year, the permanent commission was extended to other non-combat services which included the Regiment of Artillery, Corps of Engineers, Corps of Signals, etc. Now, normally we note that in army there are combat roles and support roles which are known as the non-combat services. And in those non-combat services, the permanent commissioning of women was allowed by the Government of India in February last year. However, this was done only prospectively to officers who have joined the Short Service Commission after the March 2019. And in this line, this Supreme Court judgment has directed the government to extend the permanent commission status to non-combat services retrospectively to women officers who have joined before even 2019. And currently, the women who are serving in various non-combat services in the Indian Army are entitled only to the short service commissions. Now, one of the drawbacks of this is that women can serve only for 5 years, which can be maximum extended up to 14 years. Now, what this does is that this deprives them of the pension and retirement benefits, which require a minimum of 20 years in service. And accordingly, this provision of permanent commissioning will have to be provided to women in the Indian Army based on the Supreme Court judgment. So presently, the women have a role in only non-combat services in the Indian Army. And due to this, they can work for maximum 5 years, which can be extended up to 14 years. And this deprives them of the permanent commissioning benefits. So recently, the Government of India had extended the permanent commissioning for the various non-combat services to the women also. However, they had done this prospectively for those who will be joining the army after March 2019. However, the Supreme Court has said that the government will now have to extend this permanent commission status to all the non-combat services retrospectively to women officers who have joined before 2019 also. Now, what is the present status of women in the Indian Army? So, Indian Army still does not provide for combat role for women. And combat roles include their role in Army, Infantry, Armored Corps, Mechanized Infantry, etc. However, the Indian Air Force has allowed women in the combat role since 2019. And in Navy, the women naval officers already perform the combat tasks. So these are few highlights of the judgment of the Supreme Court regarding the permanent commissioning of the women in the non-combat services in Indian Army. And with this, we conclude today's discussion. And now let's take up the question for the day.